Well, welcome back to Bad Apples Anime Productions. It's your host, Christian Mott, and unlike our previous works here on our YouTube, we're going to be doing something called our In Review series, which is exactly that. It's going to be our final thoughts and opinions on the full-on series that we do. Of course, we started with Fully Coolly February, and we can't thank you guys enough for all the support you had given us on it. It turned out to be a really successful project for us, and we're really excited to give you more projects like that in the future. But with that being said, this is going to be more of a traditional podcast format than our other episodes. We think it would be nice to give you guys a little bit of a break from the pure, almost research-based style videos that we had been giving you. With that being said, though, I'm not alone. Of course, our right-hand man here and the other co-founder of Bad Apples Anime Productions, as well as our editor. You know him, you love him. He does a great job on everything he does, and that is our man Sketcher. How you doing, bud?
Yeah, not too bad. This is finally the first time that the audience gets to hear us talking together. Well, not technically the first time, since that first episode of our Slices series where we had the legendary Steve Bloom send a message to you. But yeah, we finally get to talk face-to-face, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice change of pace. For anyone who has obviously followed us along and been around us long enough, you do know that we did technically have one video beforehand, which was our Teen Titans review way back on my own personal channel. If you want to give that a peek, you can. But yeah, no, this is going to be something we just kind of do every now and then. And at the end of all of our big series, so whenever we eventually tackle something like Attack on Titan or Dragon Ball, or even some of the shorter series that have multiple episodes that we really want to break down, this will be what kind of follows up as the aftermath of all of that. So you can hear more of our opinions and whatnot. Stuff that we wouldn't normally talk about in the normal reviews.
Yeah, like I explained before, like the reason we can't really have more conversational pieces like this face-to-face is because like we record in separate studios. So like until the day comes when we actually get to have a shared studio of our own and just record together, then this will probably be the best you can get from us. So we apologize for that, but we hope you enjoy the product nonetheless.
Well, and on top of that too, it's when we do our normal videos, right? We want to make sure for you guys are really getting good, proper information, so then you can make the judgment yourself whether or not this is going to be worth your time, or if you're not going to end up watching, it's just giving you enough information so you feel informed on it. Well, this is going to be your much more typical, conversational, really over-the-top podcast. This is going to be no filters barred, so any little kids that somehow listen to this, which I don't know if that's the case, this specific one isn't going to be for you, because these are going to be our really unfiltered opinions on the shows and whatnot after we've done all the reviews. Because in the end of the day, our reviews, while informative, we don't really get to necessarily cover everything we want. So there's some certain negatives and other things that we don't normally get to talk about, or just some weird things that we noticed either on another watch through or while we were putting together the actual episodes and didn't go back to add to them, that we put in here. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy this, maybe even more than our normal content, just because we're going to be so unfiltered and we're not, frankly, we're going to speak our damn minds. But yeah, I think this is going to be a good step for you guys. And of course, with that being said, our first review and review series, it was Fully Coolly February. And I know for us, this series means so goddamn much. But I think I want you to go in a little bit about what the series really meant to you before doing this review, and maybe like some of the stuff that maybe changed your perception, positive or negative, after doing all the work we've done over the last month on it.
So I'll go on record and admit shamelessly that Fully Coolly isn't necessarily my favorite Gainax anime. I mean, it's right up there, but I'd say my top tier is Panty and Stocking for a whole bunch of reasons that I don't really need to get into. But honestly, Fully Coolly is a unique series in itself, to the point where like it tells a story that it needs to within the span of 6 episodes, and not a lot of American series anyway can say something like that unless they're like a mini series or something like that. And I really respect that they didn't really try to push the boundaries too far, because if they had gone for a typical anime series that spans over maybe 12 episodes or even 22 episodes, I feel like the impact wouldn't have been as great.
Yeah, and I gotta say, you used the word like, yeah, it definitely didn't overstay its welcome. But I'll tell you, man, it's pretty goddamn short, man. Like, this series is 6 episodes, and it feels like you watched like 4 movies worth of shit in that time. It's kind of crazy. I gotta say though, in terms of Gainax, yeah, it's definitely not my personal top pick for the best Gainax series, but I think it definitely belongs in like the Mount Rushmore of their productions for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. The hierarchy goes Haruko's head, Stocking's head. What was that other one? The girl who like hunts ghosts with the sword or whatever, something like that. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Yes. Oh, okay. It's not hitting my mind. How do you not bring up Shinji? You gotta put Shinji on there.
I was gonna save that for you.
Yeah, yeah. You got to put Shinji, and you know my heavy bias towards the Daikon girl, but you know I think you put her on there too.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
But anyways, to stay on track, yeah, man, Fulcoli's. I don't think there's any other way to say it. It's fucking weird, like really weird.
Um, I'm curious. So you said before that you've never really met a group of people who have unanimously voted on what Fully Cooley is about. I'm curious because I have my own personal opinion, but I want to see what you think definitively in your own words. What idea the series is supposed to represent?
Dude, I think there's 2 things, right? There's either you have the what you're trying to get out of it and what it actually was. What it actually was a bunch of dudes that came together, said, I like a bunch of different shit and let's put it all together. And that's what happened. So that's what it is. But what I think the message you get from it can vary. I think it comes down to the time in your life you're looking at it, the mindset you're in, all sorts of different things I think factor into what you gain out of it. I think truly the story is all about the idea of relationships and maturity. And those themes are definitely played a lot, especially in like the second half, as we mentioned in some of these reviews. But when you really look at it, those are the 2 big themes that constantly get brought up. Between Naota's constant, like, almost bipolar nature in his relationships, and his sense of he needs to be this mature adult when he's not. And I think those are really the themes, but you're never going to have anyone agree on it because there's so much different shit that happens. I mean, God, you have in the same episode, you have a giant monster fight while you also have a sexual egg-eating exercise. Like, there's so much shit that goes flying into your face that it's such a sensory overload. It's hard to really get, like, the true definitive single answer of what this story is about.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And because in my case, the first time I actually watched the series, I don't know if this was the same for you, but I watched it when I was like a sophomore in high school, and I think, and I didn't really watch it repeatedly up until this point. I only watched it maybe like once a year, and my original thoughts were, like you said, like the idea of transitioning through puberty, trying to find your place in life as you transition from a child to adult. And that definitely says a lot about Naota's character growth throughout the series, from this second time around watching it for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many just different things that happen in the show, and there's so many different lessons you can take from it. I know another one that a lot of people have talked to me about is that it's about being yourself, and they use like the Puss in Boots episode to try to help out with that, as well as what we really see Naoto's at his happiest when he's acting like a kid instead of trying to be an adult. So I've seen that one thrown around. There's so many goddamn theories about this damn show. Like, this show, in reality, probably could get the same amount of dissection that something like Evangelion gets, but it just doesn't, because I think one of the big tragedies with this show is it didn't, like, it's super popular because it had a big cult following, but it never really hit the same heights as like a lot of the other big hitters from Gainax, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And just to backtrack just a little bit, I'll give you, well, since I watched it with a more pseudo grown up perspective now, I'll tell you that my hot take, I think the series is about addiction. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, there's definitely instances where that would make sense because Naota is so obsessed with like trying to be an adult that he's quite literally like addicted to it. I mean, obviously there's more obvious examples. I mean, Mamimi, she was going through relapse after. Well, she would never really stop smoking, to be fair, but she was always smoking, and I mean that's the most obvious example. But I think that there's definitely a case to be made, but that's once again both the strength and weakness of Fooly Cooly. There's so much shit that happens. Like, it does not feel like 6 episodes. It really does not. It feels like you watched like 50 episodes worth of content unfold in your brain in a 6-episode span.
Yeah, and that's the idea. Like, a lot of these characters, they actually display a consistent amount of feelings and references to one another. One of them being why I say addiction, because, Haruko is so hell-bent on getting what she wants through Atomisk, not necessarily him, but what he represents, like so much power within the universe that she's willing to like let an entire town get destroyed because of that. And like you said, some cases are more literal, with Mamimi being addicted to cigarettes, but also the idea that she still has a chance with Naota's brother, which she so blatantly displays on Naota himself. It's like everybody has their own quirks, but that's what makes it realistic to me, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. I'll tell you one thing, dude. I gotta say it because I've always thought this too. I wonder if because once again, one of the big things I know is when they went to make this show, the creative team literally just said, "Fuck it, let's just put a bunch of stuff we like together in one show." And I wonder if they ever thought about how many people would actually try to dissect this show to figure out what its real meaning is. And I think that's kind of. I've always wondered that. I wonder if they're just like trolling us, and that this was just what they wanted to do to make it so it can be somewhat coherent.
There are a lot of different types of creators in the industry. You have some cases where people want to look for a reaction. Maybe they want fans to dissect this, but other times you just have creators where like they just don't care. Like they just want to make what they want to make. And that's similar in the case of Anno when he was making Evangelion. Like, I know he was going through a lot of personal struggles that ultimately changed the ending of the series, but it also gave him the opportunity to, draw back to the well and make fresh water later down the line with all these movies.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I sure went over some of the rehash basic information at the beginning, but yeah, I mean, Gainax kind of was founded on the idea of just doing your own creative stuff. I mean, literally, the creative team behind Gainax created Daikon and put everything they liked because they wanted to pay homage to pop culture. So, I mean, the whole foundation of the company was based off of your own creativity. So it makes sense something like Fooly Cooly would exist. And, yeah, dude, it's just, there's something about the show. And for those who haven't watched it or watched a review or anything like that, please, just do me a favor. Stop what you're doing right now. Come back to this after you've watched this series. And tell me how you viewed it on your first viewing. Because listening to how we talk about it will change how you view the show so much. I think one of the biggest strengths of this series, compared to like other Gainax works, even other anime at the time, because you gotta remember, this was like 2000. This is literally 2000, 2001. Anime's still riding its peak. It's really hitting its peak, starting to hit its initial peak in the U.S. And I think the most powerful thing this show does is it gives you that feeling. And I know that everyone's felt this feeling. It's that true, like, childlike enjoyment where you don't need to overthink anything and you can just watch and enjoy this series. Which I think is just so powerful because you look at this show, it's so complex. I mean, we've been talking for about 15 minutes now. We haven't even really scratched the surface of the series. Yet, at the very same time, it's the perfect show to turn your brain off and relive that like childlike amusement you have with stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, like there's so much to unfold. Like I feel like we might have done it some justice when we were doing our initial reviews, but like actually getting to sit down and discuss this with you live is probably sure to really bring in some new perspectives that I hadn't even thought about when I was writing my notes down. But it's definitely a series that you want to watch more than once. Once by yourself, and the second time around, maybe with some friends to see their take on it for sure.
No, 100%. I think something that I really want to emphasize, though, the show I wouldn't necessarily say is for everyone, though. I don't think you could just casually come in having no idea what the hell FLCL is, or maybe not even anime. This is definitely not like a good gateway anime for sure. This is not that at all. This is for like people who are entrenched, people who already watch a lot of anime, or people who've watched anime maybe a little more on the casual side who are really trying to get into the deep end. Like I consider this like a deep end anime because while it's kind of mainstream, this is how this show does things. Is like you gotta really be a big anime fan to enjoy this. Now, I'm not saying that's the 100% the case with everyone. There's gonna be people who've never watched anime who jump into this and love it. But I think that if you showed this to somebody who doesn't like anime or is much more of a casual fan, they're gonna have no clue what's going on and they're not gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, that's fair. And like, you pick and choose what you like in an anime. Like you watch the first episode of something and then you decide if you want to stick with it. But when it comes to Fully Cooley, I honestly think the first episode that we're about to discuss, I think that says a lot about the tone that it's trying to make. And with that being said, do you wanna hop into the first one with me?
Well, I think what's more important here too is to discuss some of the other things. First off, Gynax, man. Like the fact that Gynax greenlit this is kind of impressive, man. Just because when you think about the anime that was popular in the 90s, it's all these super shonen fighting series. There's not like too many like slice of life because a lot of people will argue what kind of genre Foolically is. And I think of it as a slice of life anime, to be honest with you. But that wasn't really a popular thing at that time. I mean, once again, this was the peak of Dragon Ball here in the US. You had One Piece. You had even other shows like Hellsing started to get popular. I mean, Evangelion, which was even a bigger Gynax work for you. So, like, the fact that this show just, like, happened was kind of crazy.
Yeah, some of the heavy hitters that we kind of really had were the original Helsing and even Elfen Lied that kind of came out a little bit after this. Like those kind of series were of course serialized. They had one long continuous story helping them, but Fully Cooley kind of broke the formula a little bit. Like sure, you can watch all this like a movie, but I feel like if you were to watch at least the first 5 episodes out of order, you probably wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference aside from visual differences coming from characters.
And that's another thing, too. Another thing that kind of broke the mold with this series is this. There wasn't too many series that started as anime onlys before this point. I mean, yes, Evangelion started as an anime exclusive, and Cowboy Bebop, but that's honestly about it.
Yeah, and that's something else we can probably talk about a little bit. Like, I don't know if a lot of people who have watched Fully Cooley have gone back to check out the manga, but since we both shouted out the omnibus. Like, the manga really has somewhat of a different tone later on than the anime likes to make, and I think that's kind of unique because retelling an anime series as a manga kind of gives you a chance to deviate and tell much more of a grand story than you were initially looking to tell. That's not limited by animation or something like that.
Oh, 100%. Side note, I still don't have my omnibus hit through yet. I ordered that thing a damn month ago, and it never came in. Anyways, I think another thing that I really want to highlight with this series is its music, dude. The goddamn pillows. Who freaking knew that this was going to be like one of the most popular Japanese rock bands of the 20th century? Like, completely out of nowhere.
I mean, yeah, I see performances, recorded performances all the time where like they're in the States and like even though American audiences probably can't understand the lyrics, like they just don't care because Fooly Cooly was such a gateway series to all these sort of tropes that are popular in Japan, and even the music itself, like they just get lost in what they believe the tone of the music to be, and they just recognize it from a time where anime and music wasn't really that well blended together. I mean, Helsing did it well, but like, can you think of any other anime from this time that really utilized its soundtrack in such a way like this did?
I mean, okay, so there was a lot of good soundtracks beforehand, and by the way, there will be an episode coming out this month that I'm gonna solo, all about like the music of anime and like how music has kind of changed and how it was used in shows and whatnot. But music has always been a big part of anime. I mean, it's the extra chord that helps deliver an emotional reaction to people. Like Dragon Ball was the first one I can think of that really did that good. Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z did that really well. But when you look at how the Pillows songs worked in Fooly Cooly compared to all the other songs that were used at the time, a lot of the songs used at the time were just kind of to set the scene, right? I know Cowboy Bebop's the master at that. Cowboy Bebop's jazz soundtrack was setting the scene for what was happening. You would have like that upbeat like saxophone for fight scenes and whatnot. However, I feel how the Pillows songs were used in Fooly Cooly quite literally were part of the story. And I think that's what made its soundtrack so unique compared to other shows. Is not so much that, oh, its soundtrack was unique because of who was an unknown band, this, and that. I think it was unique because a lot of stories used their songs to complement the story, while the Pillows and how Fooly Cooly used their songs were literally to be part of that story.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like the case where this kind of series would have benefited from a regular kind of score with a 80 piece orchestra or whatever. Like the fact that they actually found a way to integrate just a three-person band into an entire set piece was pretty impressive in my opinion.
Oh, it's super impressive. But I mean, that's kind of what made Gainax at that time the juggernauts of the industry, man. It, they were able to do so much with so little, and that's kind of what made them the titan they were. And of course, I don't think we can really go into the episode by episode without mentioning how freaking gorgeous this show is. The show is fucking beautiful. Beautiful. I don't think it's the best looking anime ever, but with how seamless it transitions through styles, and even how it uses like techniques that really haven't been refined until more recently, like CG and 3D, it works so well.
Actually, on the subject of that 3D CGI shot where Haruko performs mouth to mouth on Naota and Mimimi just has her jaw dropped, we get a little glimpse of a kind of a tour bus hidden camera style thing where the characters are revealed to be just actors. Now, here's a discussion question for you. So, in this alternate reality where Haruko, Mimimi, Naota, they're just actors performing Fooly Cooly as a series, what kind of gigs do you think they'd normally get in everyday life? Like, what kind of roles do you see Haruko's actress playing in everyday life?
You know, that's not a question I ever thought I'd get asked about them. But I'll tell you what, she probably would be doing some like rom coms, or she'd probably go. She might be going into the adult entertainment.
Do you think she would eventually go on to play Jinx in Arcane?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, man, you're pulling out of left field here, bud. I don't know, man. I like how that's where we go with it.
Now here's a thought that I thought about. Like Naota, like he's just a kid actor. Like he'll grow into more roles if he decides to pursue this kind of thing. But a funny idea that I think could be plausible is maybe he integrates to the States where his English gets a little better and he somehow finds his way to Nick Jr. where he can take over the hosting duties of the original host of Blue's Clues as Steve's little brother.
Oh my god. Bro, this is not a conspiracy theory episode. Come on. Bro, just imagine that shit, though. Oh, my God.
But yeah, the way that Gynax like threw in that subtle fourth wall break, I think it just shows a testament as to how they just didn't really care about the rules like that. Like they were actually doing what a lot of animated series could do at the time, like talk directly to the audience and stuff like that. And I don't know, I just thought that moment was pretty neat.
I'll tell you what, though, you brought up a really good word there. Rules. You know, so much anime at that time, too. And I think that's another reason why this series is so unique, is almost every anime before and even after kind of just follows a formula. You know, it's beginning of the episode, we got to introduce stuff or reestablish things. Depending on the series, it's either fight or whatever issue's happening, cliffhanger at the end. FLCL doesn't work like that. It literally breaks every conventional rule of storytelling. And I think that's part of its beauty, and I also think that's part of the reason people get so confused with it. Because we're so used to just having a series start, happen, end, that when something doesn't work like that, it becomes a much more confusing story.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that sometimes like they really lean into the comedy aspect, like when Haruko shows up to Naota's house in the first episode, like they literally jump right into manga format where they're all in panels and everything. Like you don't really get to see much animation, but when it happens, it's literally just hands or something like that. And the fact that they had the gall to really make a big transition like that honestly made me respect Gynax a little bit more, just because of the fact that they really utilized what limited maybe budgets and animation they would have had back then.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing that's so impressive about this series, too, though. It had like a third of the budget that some of the other big projects that Gynax was doing had. Like, people don't realize how important it is. So, whenever anyone talks about, like, oh, the animation, that's where all the budget went, that's not the case at all. Really, the budget is more about how many people you have working on a project and the quality of people working on said project. And the fact is that they were able to take the best talent possible and maximize what resources they had was so damn impressive, man. But with that being said, I know you've been waiting for a little bit here. I know you want to dive into each episode. You want to dive into the episodes themselves. So I'm going to let you kind of start off with this, and I'll kind of build off of you as you go.
Well, the basic idea was to just take parts of like what we thought made the episodes like so great on their own, rather in comparison to watching them like a full thing, because I think the first episode really works well as a pilot because it gets its characters introduced right away, however brief they might be, like especially with the case of Naota's classmates, starting with Ninamori. Like we can already see that they all have a friendly relationship with each other, but there's still plenty to be unpacked as we get further into the series. I don't know if that was your first thought when you started seeing the introduction of these characters.
I mean, I'll tell you what, it was such a flip for me. So the first half to the second half was wild. Because like when you watch the first 3 episodes compared to the last 3 episodes, and this is because of the director changing, it's so different, dude. Like you watch the first 3 episodes, and it feels like way more comedic than it ever should. Then it gets to this back half, and that's when like stuff gets more serious, and it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And even that first official fight where Conti is introduced for the first time and we get to see the robot opposing him, like when you see how much of an upgrade like the animation gets from there, from basic still shots like to actually kind of panoramic camera angles during that entire fight, like that really knocked me off my seat the first time I saw it.
Yeah, man, the animation is so dynamic. But see, that's something that's consistent throughout all 6 episodes. Is the animation super dynamic? However, I feel like it used a lot more dynamic shots and camera work and even coloring in its second half compared to its first half.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, part of the charm of FLCL is that it can seamlessly integrate shots where you feel like they could be shot in live action. Like especially the first time we see Mamimi, where it's kind of a ground angle of just her swinging the bat. Like that could be something anybody could shoot in real life, but like the fact that they animated it so realistically with like nice shading and nice movement on her, you almost feel like that probably could have been rotoscoped even.
100%. I'll tell you what though. So while I gush over the animation for this series, I know there's some people who really don't like the animation style that Fully Cooley ended up with, and not even so much just the base designs and style itself. It's, if you haven't watched Fully Cooley, think of it like any other really popular show where you have animators working on different parts of the episode, and the drastic change in style goes really off the wall in some of these episodes. Like, there's one scene in, I'm trying to remember what episode it was. I think it's 3, I want to say, where it's the two cats are kind of chasing each other. And it's that funny scene where, like, Conti brings back the wrong, like, Playboy magazine.
That was episode 2, I believe.
I think so. But it's so minimalist. Like, it honestly just feels like somebody took a painting and brought it to life, compared to like the very next scene where you get more of the traditional style that it has. And I think some people are not going to like that at all. For me, I didn't mind. I actually love that kind of stuff. But I can tell you right now, for people who are interested in looking at this series, if you don't like when styles get changed frequently, or you don't like when you get jarred by like how different something looks from shot to shot, Fully Cooley definitely does that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And curious question. So, what did you think about Haruko's introduction? Like, what'd you think of her as on a protagonist level? Like, did you see her really as kind of a unique protagonist when she really got into her comedic routine?
So I'll tell you what. So some of the charm that comes with Fully Cooley, and this is the last thing I want to talk about before we really dip into the episode by episode stuff that you want to do, is Fully Cooley is so important as a dub in particular. So while most people credit like Cowboy Bebop for really changing how dubbing works, I think Fully Cooley should have just as much of a say, because obviously you had Carrie Walgren in her first major role, which is obviously a big deal. But like how the character is portrayed in the dub compared to the sub is so different. While there's comedic beats and comedic tones, how the mannerisms come out and the overall tone of the voice is so much better in the dub. And I think with her as a character, and I think this is the case with every character, except for maybe Naota, and even Naota suffers from this a little bit, and this is both another strength and weakness of this show, is these characters are very clearly defined. However, you never get to look into them enough where you really get to know how they're feeling or thinking. So they leave you a lot of information on the table, and I think that works in some regards because it keeps a little bit of like a wonderful mystique, especially around Haruko's character in particular. But it really hurts in other regards too because you don't get to connect to the characters as much as you need to.
Yeah, I honestly think it's kind of better that way, that there's this kind of sense of mystery, because you can say a lot with so little, and like if a series leaves you with a lot to be desired rather than overstaying its welcome with its character to the point where you can't relate to any character at all, like when you originally saw them in, I think that really sets your status as a good original OVA.
Oh, 100%. I just think my problem is, though, right? And where I think people will have problems is Haruko, while her example works on keeping her mysterious, Naoto's is supposed to be spending so much time with her, especially towards the end of the series. Like, he literally abandons his home and goes basically... He becomes a homeless person with Haruko. But the problem is they didn't create enough of a connection with her to us to make us feel the same way Naota ends up feeling. While Naota, we obviously... He's the only character we actually connect enough where we really get to feel what he's feeling.
Yeah, that's true. And that might be kind of the point of Haruko's existence, because she doesn't really belong on this planet. She literally says it herself. She admits it. She's an alien. She's not supposed to be on Earth, but circumstances just happen to connect where the one person she wants to find is around the area, and only by using Nauta as a basis for obtaining kind of power ups per se in order to pursue her goals, it kind of makes it to where she can come and go as she pleases, and I think that's the whole point of her character, if I'm being honest.
Okay, that's very fair. I don't know. For me, I just felt really rewatching this compared to when I was younger and this was more nostalgic. I really just think they should have done a little bit more with her, even if it was small things. I just didn't. After this recent watch through, I mean, still like her as a character. I still think she's one of my more enjoyed characters in fiction. I just don't think she connected in the terms of the story as good as I need. I used to think she did.
Yeah, it's fair, but like thankfully we get like a little bit more of her. Like we really get to see what her psyche makes her out to be, and especially in episode 2. I don't know if you have much more to say about episode 1 specifically.
Not much really. I mean, it does what it needs to do. I mean, everyone knows one of my favorite scenes in anime is when Naruto and Mamimi talk on that bridge. I mean, that's a super good moment, and I think it's really the moment that, for me at least, it kind of shows you what kind of story, like how heartfelt and really, the serious side of Fooly Cooley. Which, for me, listen, I love that it's a comedy. But I think Fooly Cooley actually it was more impactful for me when it actually touched the serious subjects. And while its comedy was fun, I look at its comedy, and some people are going to look at it as hit and miss. Some of it's really going to make people laugh, others not so much. But I think Fooly Cooley, for me, its strongest points are when it gets serious. And I think maybe that's another reason why I like the second half of the show more than I do the first half. It's because, the second half is really when the show gets serious and starts diving into those decisions Naota has to make.
Yeah, it's very fair, and, with the case of this being only 6 episodes, they really needed to figure out their tone rather quickly, because it's obvious within the first 5, maybe 10 minutes of episode 1 that even though they're establishing themselves as a unique series that has its comedy, like when the middle of the episode has that heart-to-heart talk with Naota and Mamimi on the bridge, like where we get to see a glimpse of why Mamimi gets so upset from Naota's older brother getting an American girlfriend. Like, it just really, it hits deep, because sometimes conversations like that are important to a person's growth, even if the news that they discover ends up hurting them as a whole, but at least they know the other side of the story.
Yeah, and I mean, that's another thing, and this isn't so much just Fooly Cooley, it's anime in general, man. I think part of the reason I love anime so much is you get those heart-to-heart. You get those real connections. Like, cartoons here in the States started to do that a little bit better, but for the most part, cartoons stay more cartoonish here in the States, while anime in Japan really can give you stuff that you can relate to, and stuff that really inspires you to look at how you treat people, and how your places in this world, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, they did this actually really cleverly in One Piece. They've been doing this all this time, where like it's an adventure series, so like you want to focus on the adventure. You don't really have a lot of time to see any of the characters having downtime or just talking amongst themselves, but they rectify this when they have all sorts of filler episodes where you can see how characters bounce off of each other in dynamics and more casual settings. And I don't know, I have a feeling that if Fooly Cooley had gone a regular route where it would have still been kind of an ongoing series, discounting the other parts of the series that came out years later, I think we probably would have seen maybe a more integral, maybe more organic growth for Haruko as a person.
Yeah, 100%. I gotta ask you this real quick, because I know that we've talked about this off air a little bit, and I don't know if we ever mentioned it in the reviews. I know we've definitely talked about this character in the reviews, but man, I gotta get your thoughts on eyebrows. Like, how do you think he was used in the series? I was not admittedly a big fan of how they used him at the end of the day. I really think they should have done a lot more with him, and especially got him in there earlier. But what's your overall thoughts on his character and really how he fit in the grand scheme of things?
So I'll go on record and say I think he was used in the perfect amount of time in the perfect amount of scenes. Here's why: because we already know he has a history with Haruko. He knows her real name, Raharu, and given that knowledge, it gives you the opportunity to imagine how their story might have gone when he was a kid. Like you said, like there's a lot to be uncovered with certain characters that we don't really get to see, so we have to leave things up to our own imagination. So I feel like if they would have made kind of a prequel 6 episode series where it was focused on Eyebrow's life or initial interactions with Haruko, then it kind of would have taken away from Naota's story if Eyebrows would have been more prominent this time around, because it's about Naota's kind of eventual growth into the character he becomes in the last episode. So I don't know. I think Eyebrows was used pretty much. He came and went as he was required for the story, I think.
And you're right, because in the end of the day, just like any show, you got to focus on your main character. But I feel like with how they used him and what he was supposed to be doing in this story, I think it would have been better to have either a little more context or just seeing how he interacted. Maybe I think would have been a big thing for him, because most of his interactions were just with Naota. And I think we need to really see the atmosphere more with him and Haruko, because we only really get that one shootout scene, and that's about it. We don't really get to see, why he disdains her as much as he does. Like, he explains it, he talks about it, but there's not enough. Like, when I watch the series, he's supposed to really be the figure to trying to, like, show Naoto why what he's doing is wrong, but there's not enough there to show why he is justified in explaining this to Naota.
Yeah, maybe if we would have gotten maybe a flashback sequence or two to Eyebrows' childhood, then we might have actually been able to sympathize and connect with him more. But I think the general consensus of the fan community is that he's kind of a villain, even though he's trying to do what's right and look out for the lives of the city.
Yeah, that's very true. And, I mean, when you look at this series in particular, a lot of people do view him as an antagonist. But I don't know. I mean, listen, he's doing what he's got to do. I just wish they had elaborated more into why he should be in a justified position. Because, yeah, at the end when they're on top of the medical mechanica facility and he pulls a gun out on Haruko and Naota, I mean, obviously he's there to stop Haruko, but there's not enough justification to why we should feel either way. So that moment is supposed to conflict us like it conflicts Naota, which we understand that Naota's conflicted because of the basically angel-devil dynamic those two characters have with him. But at the same time, us as a viewer don't get that. And I think that was something that really should have... If there was like a big change I could make to Fooly Cooley, I think that would have been one of the big ones. Really, they should have made us feel the same way Naota felt in that moment, and they didn't.
Yeah, but at the same time, maybe it's good that like some viewers can't fully get the experience that a character on screen is going through, because if you think about how traumatic some events in Naota's life might be, like, just one getting run over first off, and then some of the more psychological horrors that he gets to witness at the halfway point of the series, like maybe it's best to just see things kind of as a glimpse through their perspectives rather than feeling the whole scope of it.
Yeah, but I feel like with those two characters in particular, you have to, though, because the weight isn't so much the decision Naota makes, it's what happens after, and when he ultimately absorbs Adamisk. Which, while I understand why that was important, and this and that, and a lot of fans criticize me over saying it, that wasn't necessarily the resolution, in my opinion, for his character. He really should have addressed both sides, and the whole point is he's been wanting to do what he wants to do. He should have expressed that better, and I know that's technically what he did when he went to Haruko and this and that, but I really think it should have been important for both of them to know that. Naota. Naota as a character, his whole point is he's trying to do his thing. He wants to be his own person. He wants to be a strong-minded adult. The thing is, though, in that moment, there's not enough conveyed to us to make us feel the same way he feels, which is what obligation is going to be my decision. That's just, yeah, that's definitely criticism. I understand why people like that scene, but for me, I mean, listen, it works great. I love the action and whatnot, but that is one that when you look at it from a real critical standpoint, that scene's really going to miss with a lot of people.
Yeah, and some things can be reminisced upon with this series, and some things can be attempted to be forgotten, and no better case with that than maybe some of the more dramatic themes that especially come with Mamimi's backstory and what kind of life she had to live up until this point, if you want to get into episode 2. So we see at the beginning of episode 2 that like the basic theme is fires, and when you get to eventually realize like why Mamimi is so attached with Naota's brother, like when he actually saved her from a school fire that she caused, it's like it really proves that some characters get to actually be allowed to have layers that some other anime might not get to let their characters have. I don't know if you agree with that kind of statement.
I mean, yeah. I mean, but here's the problem, though. They did this with certain characters, right? And once again, I want to make this very clear to people, because we're almost an hour in. Even though I've said a lot of negatives, I say this because this whole series we did over the last month is my love letter to the series. Don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, I'm still going to say you absolutely should watch this series. No ifs, ands, buts about it. But for me, this episode is so important for me to let you know more of the critical side of things. Because with this show, there's just so much to unpack, and I think I owe it to you as both a content creator and just as a fan of anime to explain to you why certain things just didn't work. And yes, I 100% agree. I think it was awesome they did that with Mamimi's character and whatnot, but they needed to do that with more of her main cast. They did it with Mamimi, and they kind of did it with Naota, but that's about it. And when you're doing this and you're creating that core cast, I think we just need a little more. And I get that they only had 6 episodes, and I get they had a smaller budget, but I think that when you're trying to actually convey this story, despite it being just batshit craziness and them just literally putting whatever the hell they wanted in there, you still have to give everyone in your main cast that opportunity, and they really didn't.
Yeah, and maybe that adds to the whole mystique about this series being centered on puberty. Like with kids growing up, they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like they don't know how their bodies are going to be changing and whatnot. And the fact that some characters are even unsure of themselves, like how Naota is primarily like he doesn't know if he can eventually learn to trust Haruko or if he can trust Eyebrows and his opinions, like no matter how hard Eyebrows is trying to convince him that sweet stuff is better or to stick seaweed over your kind of lack of eyebrows. Like it really brings things full circle when some characters have to make ultimate decisions about themselves, and that's not displayed better with the climax that we'll get into later on. But I definitely agree that while some characters could have had more to their stories, like sometimes a character only serves one single purpose, and that can be said through both anime and Western animated media. It just, if they overstay their welcome, then maybe they kind of lose their meaning as to why they were included in the first place. But that's not always the case, though. Actually, do you want to talk about some of these kids? Because I don't think we really had much to say about Naota's classmates throughout the entire review.
Yeah, and I mean, his classmates are really cool because they're living what Naota kind of wants, which is just like, I wouldn't say carefree world, but a world where you can have those maturities and responsibilities. But they're living what he really wants, which is to still be a kid and still have fun, but still carry a level of responsibility and maturity. I mean, listen, you hear them, they talk about them paying for a truck and this and that, and I mean, it's really kind of what Naruto wants, but he's too stubborn to like admit it.
Yeah, true. And like some things that Fully Cooley got right, and this is kind of the case with all kind of series from the early 2000s and even before that in like the 80s, like they really knew how to capture the essence of childhood. Like you have four main characters who are kids. Like you want to make sure that they actually feel like real kids that you'd probably see hanging out together in preschool or middle school or whatever. And like the relationships I can see being a little bit believable. But here's my question to you. Like with the exception of maybe Nina Mori, who do you think is Naoto's best friend in the core four group that we see them with?
Man, it's a tough call, dude, because Nina Moore is really the only one we see him spend really significant time with.
Now, see, here's a case where sometimes less might be more in my case, because I think Masashi is kind of Naoto's best friend. Kind of, he's the one with the longer hair and the purple puffer jacket. And here's why, because throughout the appearances that we get to see them kind of one-on-one with, we see this in episode 3, the Puss in Boots episode, where, like, Masashi is passing Naoto one of his dad's tabloid magazines, and they kind of have this a little bit of an unspoken bond between each other. And it feels like Masashi's kind of the calmest one of the group, and compared to Gaku, the kid with glasses, who's kind of more hyperactive and excited about everything. Like if there was ever kind of a strong relationship I could see Naoto having, it's probably with Masashi the most, because I feel like they're the most chill out of each other, and they can probably learn the most from each other.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. I will mention this about oh my god, I can't speak. Masashi. Is that relationship, well, once again, it has very little screen time. That one kind of reminds me of our relationship a bit. And I will agree there, but I don't know, man. We just didn't get to spend enough time with those kids.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably, I don't know, I was thinking there was probably this little bit of hierarchy, because when it comes to these kind of franchises or whatever, like Stranger Things, for example, like you see the boys being friends first, and any kind of female characters kind of get added last. So I'm thinking that maybe between Naoto, Gaku, and Masashi, like the three boys, they were probably friends since maybe even birth. We have no idea. But if that was the case, then Nina Mori is probably one of the last members, because, being Naoto, he probably didn't want to hang out with the girls until a certain point. But it wasn't until they got to middle school where they were introduced to Nina Mori as their class president of all things that maybe she started getting invited to some hangouts, like visiting abandoned buildings and whatnot, where she kind of felt like one of the guys, but at the same time she was still, a girl, and that's kind of the perspective from a young boy's mind.
Yeah, that's fair, man. So I don't want this to go too long, so I really want to get more of your general thoughts on this show. Maybe some other things you liked about this show, some stuff you didn't like. And ultimately kind of where you sit on it at the end of the day.
Well, I do want to go back to your point on how some things are really unresolved. Like the one thing that really bugged me out of episode 4, which was, kind of the Halloween themed episode, because like there were so many unusually creepy things, and some of them were a little bit scary, but particularly so with Naoto's dad being replaced by a robot, and we find out that Naoto's dad is like kind of rotting, almost decomposed, until Naoto saves him. Like, is it ever explained where the robot body came from? Was it just a medical mechanica thing?
Yeah, that's what I think happened there at the end of the day. I think Conti or Marco got something from medical mechanica to do that, and that's kind of just what happened.
Yeah, but like it's little things like that that make me wish that maybe some things had been better explained. But overall, I think the fact that kind of the series had so many tonal shifts is my favorite thing about it, because I wouldn't want every episode to be like the exact same thing. Like you need some kind of scary episodes like episode 4 did to really shake things up and show that you can have all your eggs in one basket, but like you can do unique things with said eggs.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but that's once again, that's the beauty of the series, and I think it's fit so much in that it really did hurt itself in other ways, but I still think it works at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah, and especially for the time period it came out, and like, uh, I'm sure people weren't sure how anime was going to be taking off, but like when you look at what series have come out since then, and I'm not just talking about the other seasons of Fooly Cooly that came out in 2012, but like just everything that Gainax and even Studio Trigger produced, like it feels like Fooly Cooly might have paved the way for some of these big titles to get really insane and do whatever they wanted.
Oh, 100%. I think it's definitely one of those gateway series to everything else that came afterwards. Because I mean, think about it. Look at how comedy and anime changed after Fooly Cooly. I mean, it was allowed to become more self-aware. It took on some of the tropes that Fooly Cooly kind of established with its comedy and its tone and everything else. That yeah, man, you kind of can't talk about early 2000s anime without mentioning Fooly Cooly in some capacity.
Yeah, exactly. And like the fact that I got introduced to it like so later, this would have been around 2012, like almost 12 years after it came out, like I almost felt bad for myself because I feel like I would have been missing out on such a unique opportunity that most kids probably didn't get back in the early 2000s.
Oh, 100%. But with that being said, though, this was really good talk. I think we got a lot of really good stuff out there. And at the end of the day, guys, really, Fooly Cooly is just, it's a special series. It's one that we, even with us talking for almost an hour, really only scratched the surface of what it really is all about. And it's one of those series you really can't, like, just talk and review. It's something you have to just watch first. So, once again, thanks for giving us a listen. If you've somehow made it to this point, good on you. I mean, this is easily the longest video we'll have on the channel at this point.
But should we do something kind of stereotypical and just give the chat some random word to spam in the comments?
Yeah, you know what? If you made it to this point, type in eyebrows in the chat. All right, put eyebrows in the chat, and yeah, man, you gotta just go watch this series. I mean, once again, there's no other way to really enjoy it or appreciate it or even interpret it until you go watch it.
I think every episode is on YouTube, so it's not like you have hard access to it.
Yep, every episode's on YouTube, and of course, if you're somebody who's subscribed to Crunchyroll, or even, well, they used to be on Netflix, they took it off. But if you're on Crunchyroll, you can also get it there. Once again, really, really recommend it. Before we go, I'm going to mention a couple of projects coming up, too, before we let you on your way. I know a big one I'm doing coming up, as I'm actually going to be doing a whole video, kind of follow off the article, which you should go check out at Bad Apple's Anime Reviews, down in the description below. And that will be a video all about like the evolution of music. That one's going to be done by myself. So another big thing is Sketcher. He's going to be taking a bit of a vocal break, so a lot of these videos are going to be me soloing from a vocal standpoint. He just needs to take a break. He's got some projects on his channel, which you should also check out, that he's going to be doing. And it'll be my voice alone. Do you have anything else you want to really add on here at the end?
I was just going to go radio silence just to add on to your alone voice bit. But no, I think that's pretty much all I had to say about this series, and honestly, I can't thank you guys enough for actually getting us this far into our viewership. Like, and honestly, if there's anything you really want to see from us, like, don't be afraid to shout it out. Like, we're pretty much open to anything. The only reason we have certain themes and videos on what we've had so far is it's just because it's stuff that we want to personally review. So if you want to see any hot takes that we have on any other anime series or obscure media like Fooly Cooly, like, don't be afraid to hit us up or anything like that.
Yeah, and while we are an anime reviews page, and a lot of the stuff we're just going to be doing ourselves will be anime based, if you have music, movies, anything, we'll give it a listen, and we will review it. I mean, at the end of the day, we are here to give you guys content to listen to and enjoy, and we can't do it without you guys, literally. So with that being said, we are still going to be an anime page, But if you have other things you want us to look at, listen to, we'll take it all in. We'll put up reviews to it and reactions to it. And once again, you know, this series for us in particular, besides just being our first major YouTube project together, and of course being a personal project, it's really our first project for you guys to check out. I mean, you guys gave us so much support. I mean, we had done our Daikon video, God, a month and a half ago already, which makes me feel kind of crazy that time's flying that quick. But, you know, we started out with 8 subscribers entering February, and we're over 30 now. And, you know, that's all because of you guys giving us all the love and support, and, you know, we can't thank you enough for that. With that being said, though, you will see kind of like a schedule coming up, and I'll probably be posting that on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, so for everyone listening, you'll keep an eye open for some of the stuff we're going to be doing coming up. There's still going to be a lot of good content, but this will be the last you hear of Sketcher for most of the month. I'm going to be soloing most of this month. He will still be editing, he'll still be around, but he's going to be doing some projects for his own page, some really good stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on recently, and really give him all the love and support, because this series is largely successful due to the amount of work he's been putting in. And while I do a lot of the advertising and I do speak, he's really the mastermind behind all of this. So really make sure you support him and his time off. Once again, thanks so much, brother, for all the work you've been doing, man.
Oh yeah, no problem. This is actually a pretty big honor. And, you know, thanks for stroking my ego so I didn't have to.
Of course, man. So with that being said, we thank you so much. And this has been a Fooly Cooly in review.
Right on Shooting Star, everybody.